From serial killers who improbably predicted high-profile murders from behind bars, to perplexing instances in which children have seemingly disappeared from heavily populated areas in a matter of seconds, and without explanation, are you ready to explore 5 chilling, unsolved Halloween mysteries? Number 5. The Unknown Fate of Christy Vorak. Christy Lynn Vorak of Tacoma, Washington, was a 13-year-old girl residing with a foster family when, on Halloween night of 1982, she seemingly disappeared into thin air. Christy never had a history as a runaway or for involvement in nefarious practices, though she would frequently walk the streets at night. While investigators set on Christy's case believe she's deceased, her mother maintains hope that she's still alive. And supporting the latter, shortly after her disappearance, a handful of witnesses described sighting her at a bus depot in Seattle, though this encounter was never officially confirmed. In 1993, Christy's name was added to a list of probable victims of the Green River serial killer, Gary Leon Ridgway, due to the time frame of her disappearance and her location in the Pacific Northwest. Ridgway was arrested for his crimes in 2001 and pled guilty to 48 counts of murder, though many now suspect he was responsible for a good number more. Number 4. The Mysterious Murder of Chaim Weiss. Chaim Weiss was a 15-year-old student at the yeshiva, or Jewish educational institution, of Torah High School in Long Beach, New York, that was killed by a hatchet-like weapon in his sleep sometime between Halloween night and 6 a.m. on November 1st of 1986, when his body was discovered by a dorm counselor, concerned after he was late to Shabbat morning prayers. While his murder remains unsolved, investigators believe the killer was either a student or faculty member of the yeshiva, and that they were likely someone knowledgeable in Jewish rituals, as a window was left open in customary fashion, as to allow the dead soul to depart. Further solidifying this theory, Weiss was on antibiotics for a sore throat, making it unlikely he'd welcome in the cold air. In May of 2013, Nassau police would reopen Weiss's case, and in 2017, former students would come forward to make allegations of abuse within the yeshiva, which purportedly even drove at least one student to suicide. In the present, the case of the murder of Chaim Weiss remains open. Number 3. The Disappearance of Stephen Damon. Born on December 15th of 1952 to parents Jerry and Marilyn Damon, the case of the disappearance of Stephen Craig Damon remains a perplexing mystery. On Halloween of 1955, Marilyn would take young Stephen and his 7-month-old sister Pamela to a local bakery in East Meadow, New York. While Marilyn popped inside, she left her kids in their stroller in front of the store, as a handful of other parents were doing. But when she returned several moments later, she found both the stroller and her children missing. Eventually, the stroller was located several blocks away, with Pamela safely inside, but disturbingly, Stephen was nowhere to be seen. Several massive search parties totaling around 2,000 volunteers, backed by New York City officials, would sweep the city from the bakery outward, but sadly there was no sign of the boy. Around a month later, the Damon family would receive a series of ransom letters demanding money for Stephen's safe return. However, authorities would track down the sender and would find him to be a fraud, with no actual clue as to the missing child's whereabouts. Tragically, in 1957, what was thought to be a doll in an old bassinet box was discovered along Susquehanna Road, which was used frequently as a dump site. It turned out this doll was actually the body of a young boy who'd experienced abuse and malnourishment preceding his death. For a time, some theorized this could be Stephen, but in 2003, DNA tests resulted in a no match. Most recently, in 2009, a Michigan man by the name of John Barnes contacted the police under suspicion that he himself might be Stephen, though DNA tests would result in a no match once more. Chillingly, the search for Stephen remains active into the present. Number 2. Son of Sam predicts a murder. David Berkowitz, also referred to as Son of Sam and the .44 caliber killer, was an American serial killer who claimed 6 victims and wounded 7 others in a spree through New York City that lasted from July of 1976 to the date of his capture being August 10th of 1977. Berkowitz would confess to 8 shootings, would claim he was taking orders from a demon who spoke to him through the form of his neighbor's dog, and would be sentenced to no less than 6 consecutive life sentences. Tragically, on Halloween night of 1981, photographer Ronald Seisman and his significant other, Elizabeth Platzman, were attacked and killed within Seisman's apartment off West 22nd Street in Manhattan. The couple was brutally assaulted and then shot through the backs of their heads multiple times in execution fashion. Their bodies were discovered the next morning, and it was also documented that the apartment appeared to have been ransacked by the killers, with items torn and broken and furniture ripped as if they'd been searching for something. Chillingly, following the murder, an informant would come forward with a tip that David Berkowitz had predicted this killing before it had transpired, and had even described the exact scene in Greenwich Village at a photographer's house weeks prior. And following his conviction, many began to suspect that he wasn't working alone, but possibly as part of a larger cult. Eventually, Berkowitz would confess that Seisman had a snuff video of one of the Son of Sam killings that would shed better light on this cult, and in 1993, he would officially alter his confession to note that he had been part of a violent satanic organization that had been responsible for orchestrating the incidents, and instead that he had only participated in 3 of the Son of Sam shootings. While these claims were found credible, no evidence was ever produced. The murders of Ronald Seisman and Elizabeth Platzman remain unsolved to this day, with theories ranging from involvement of professional hitmen to claims of ties to an unpaid drug debt. Number 1. David Stone searches for the beast. David Lawrence Stone was a 29-year-old stock market analyst from La Jolla, California, with a history of anger management and control issues, who, seeking spiritual guidance, began his journey into the New Age movement in hopes of gaining a better handle over his emotions. However, on October 28th of 1988, he would get into a heated argument with a good friend, and would attack him, hitting him repeatedly. Following this violent outburst, David would decide to depart on a walkabout to reflect upon his mistakes. He would leave on Halloween morning, and would be sighted later by a farmer in the New Mexico desert walking aimlessly down a dirt road. When this farmer asked the wandering man what he was doing, David would explain oddly that he was searching for the beast, and later still, several locals would report sighting him roaming about the area, seemingly talking to himself. On November 5th, David's car was discovered abandoned along New Mexico Highway 80, 14 miles south of Road Forks, and parked right near pyramid-shaped mountains, which were, incidentally, very important symbols in the New Age movement. Eventually, search efforts were launched, and his trail was followed northwest towards Granite Peak. On one day, rescue workers would locate a pyramid made from rock surrounded in a triangle. On the following, they would find a second pyramid next to David's watch and 2 quarters, and around 3 miles to the north, searchers would discover a series of numbers written in the sand that were later identified as a complex Fibonacci sequence with a mistake, and are now considered to be one last coded message from David himself. Additionally, David's parents would find a strange note written in his hand that read, "They think the word is safe. 6 knives in Rob's room. Use buys your tea and use take your chances. Halloween." On February 23rd of 1992, 2 hikers would discover a set of skeletal remains near Granite Gap, and eventually, medical analysis would confirm them to be David's. However, examiners were unable to decipher an exact means or time of passing, chalking his fate up to dehydration and prolonged exposure. And while several maintain that he was involved in something much darker, we may never know the truth. Thanks for joining us for this list of some of the most chilling, unexplained Halloween mysteries. If you enjoyed our histories and scary stories, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn notifications on. Throw us a like, and, most importantly, share us with anyone you feel could use a good scare. We'll catch you all next time, if something else doesn't first.